Sarah Emma Edmonds by Kurt Freudenberg. Here we have the birth, age, and location. She was born on December 1841 in Magagwadavich, Canada. She died on September 5th, 1898 in La Porte, Texas, in the United States. So she transferred countries. She died of a stroke and sometimes called by her middle name Emma instead of Sarah. This is the parents and spouse. Her spouse was Celie Linus. Her mom was Elizabeth Lepers. Her dad was Isaac Edmund D, if you want to put in Edmondson. Her parents encouraged early work for Sarah. So this is about the work again. The early childhood of her, she worked as a Bible seller, and a disguised man helped her survive and eat and basically sheltered her for a while. And Edmonds escaped her first forced marriage. This is basically because women were not respected at all back in the day, and they were basically used as objects, and they got forced into marriages and stuff like that. So she had to avoid a lot of sexist obstacles of that sort throughout her early childhood. The education. Her education was really, really bad for her parents, but she still went to Oberlin College. She met Linus and had 3 kids, introduced to more opportunities. She worked as a publisher in Hartford, again, that Bible selling thing. And there's really nothing notable here. I mean, it's just a regular college thing, but she had terrible education and really not up to par with every other man in the United States at this time. So getting involved, she read this book, Fanny Campbell, that basically inspired her a bunch. It was about another independent woman on a journey, and she really was like, oh my god, I want to be like this person, I'm really inspired by her, so she took that to heart. This is when she discovered about Franklin Thompson position, when her friend was shot, so the position opened up for another disguised woman to be this Franklin Thompson guy to go on missions and basically discover stuff as a disguised man, so you could actually have a part in the Civil War, because you couldn't really if you were a woman. These are like the gender issues that I was mentioning earlier about the sexism. She felt the duty to serve her country, and even though she was born in Canada, she really felt like her home was the United States. And women had a hard time getting involved, obviously, because they were seen as less than men. I can't stress this enough. The women were literally seen as objects. Men treated them horribly back in the 1800s. She applied and won the disguise from her old friend who got shot, basically. So she overtook the position. So she could go on missions and bypass the women issues. So this is how she got by it. Next we have the disguise. She traveled into enemy territories, she worked as a detective, as we all know, and she uncovered many papers and secrets. Here's a quote. She accompanied the 2nd Michigan to Kentucky early in 1863, and reasons that were unclear deserted in April. Well, there were some sources that said, we think she discovered an undercover agent in Michigan, but it's not confirmed, but that's what we think as the reader. Next, we have the feelings around the new job, like how she's feeling about the whole transfer thing and serving the country. Everybody was delighted about her findings. She was given praise for accomplishments because she was obviously treated as a man now. And she wrote a very intense diary about her experiences during the journeys. Some people couldn't even handle the diary because of how detailed and realistic they were to the reader. Even some of the men couldn't handle it, and when they were reading it, they really got a feeling of how it was like to be her, so they kind of got surprised by that, I guess. Next, we have her missions. Again, she claimed to be selling soap and apples to soldiers when actually collecting information, so she was basically tricking them. And her mission was to reveal secrets that were hard to find. This was the whole point of her entire journey in the first place, was to uncover missions and all this kind of stuff, and secrets and undercover spies and all this kind of stuff. The only woman in the Grand Army of the Republic, and another quote, taking the name Sarah Edmonds, she worked as a nurse for the United States Christian Commission. In 1865, she published a lurid and very popular fictional account of her experiences as nurse and spy in the Union. This is, again, related to the diary thing. And she was also a nurse. So she does a lot of community work, a lot of stuff for her country. Okay, so faking a gender switch, we have the whole reason this was possible is because she was disguised as a man. Again, the whole reason of her journey was because she was a man. She would never be able to do this as a woman because of how society treated women back then. If she went as a woman, she would be captured or not listened to because of the gender inequalities. So if you got captured as a man, you could maybe argue your way out of it or get out of it, but if you're a woman, you just instantly no one would listen to you, no one would even give you a shot. But it kind of be confusing why you're even there. She had to wear a giant black wig and dye her skin black for the disguise to become like Franklin Thompson. And this ties into the gender barrier difficulties and how no women were taken seriously, which I just mentioned. They would not even be talked to if they were caught. Responsibilities of the undercover spy job. As well as her job at work, she had to take care of a home of her 3 kids. And unfortunately, all 3 died of young age because of the lack of medical equipment. This happened very, very often for kids. A lot of them would not survive because of the poor medical staff. And she had experience with this because she was a nurse. And they both had to adopt, her and Linus had to both adopt 2 kids that were healthy because of the health risks. So she didn't want to risk having more children and all that kind of stuff. They just adopted 2 that were already healthy. At least twice she undertook intelligence missions behind Confederate lines disguised as a woman. Alright, so this is the end of the Civil War. Edmonds got malaria at the very end of the war, which was a very common disease. This forced her to quit her job. The primary reason for this was because if she was sick at a hospital, she would have a very, very high chance of getting discovered because no doctor would just leave your disguise on. They would be checking you out, and you would get discovered and be caught as your undercover spy. So she really couldn't work anymore because of basically because of the health risks. And who wants to work with malaria anyways? I don't think anyone wants to do that. That just sounds horrible. Alright, her memoir was, she was the Fernal Spy of the Union Army. Her story was finally published a year after. It sold nearly 200,000 copies, and she became the only woman to mustered in the Grand Army of the Republic as a regular member. And finally, her afterlife was she was buried in the Grand Army of the Republic, where we mentioned earlier, and she was buried again in 1901 with military services and honors. And before death, she was she was a spokeswoman and made money for her previous service. So she wasn't just an undercover spy. She was also a spokesperson. She wrote diaries. She wrote books. She was a nurse. She was a well-rounded woman in the Civil War, and this was all possible because of the disguise, basically. And here are the works cited, and that's the end of Sarah Emma Edmonds.